Well, when it comes to goals, our speaker, our very own President Tony Woodall, knows when to set them, how to set them, and why to set them. More importantly, he achieves them. Tony is a fifth Dan in the Japanese martial art of Bujinkan Ninpo Taijutsu. Thank you, Tony, for the phonetic pronunciation. He started his first podcast in 2004, way before the ball game. Then in 2015, he produced and hosted Goal Getting Podcast. And while at First Republic Bank, he produced and hosted their internal podcast. I would have loved to have seen it. The best advice I ever received. Tony is a certified red team thinker. And most importantly, he's the author of the book, 9 Steps to Successful Goal Achievement, the how-to guide for goal setting success. By the way, if you're going to set goals, having success makes a lot of sense. He continues to set and achieve goals. And we know that last year, he, I guess you could say, walked 500 plus miles on the Camino de Santiago, and is about to go on a walk across Portugal in the northern part of Spain. Today, Tony is the president of Motivated Action Group, and he consults with companies, executives, and those desiring to make transformational changes in their organizations and in their lives. So please help me welcome Tony Woodall, goal setter and goal getter.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. I appreciate that. And thank you, Golden Gate Breakfast Club, for finally letting me speak. No, I'm the one who organized it all. I just delayed doing it. But, have you ever just felt like your world is falling apart and everything that you've worked for is going down the drain? Well, over the last 3 years, between the pandemic, the recent mass layoffs in the tech world and the banking world, I'm victim of that myself. We tend to get really frustrated and thinking that, well, I just can't do anything. I can't achieve my goals. The whole world is changing. Well, just like the globes, like you see on the ground here, the world changes frequently, and we go from one normal to the next normal. So that's what I call the next normal, is the world as it changes. Everything is a little different, but we still have the ability, if we follow some good guidelines, to achieve the goals that we want to achieve and be who we want to be. So maybe your dream is to own your own custom home like this. Beautiful home, 11,000 square feet, Tom. This cost much more than $4 million. It was one of my old boss's houses he built. It is now a bare ground. They tore it down. This was his backyard. Maybe you want a big backyard where you can play golf in your backyard and have gardens, whatever. Just want to have a nice backyard for your kids. Or maybe you just want to have children. That might be your goal. That might be your dream that you have. Or maybe your dream, like many of us here on this program and in this club have written the books. Maybe your desire and your dream is to write a book. You've got great information you want to share with the world or your audience, and you want to write a book. That could be your dream. Maybe like many people and like me, your goal is to lose weight from 300 pounds when I was younger to 185 pounds on the right. I achieved my dream goal of finally getting down to my goal weight of 185 pounds. Took me a while to do that, and I was in the best shape of my life. So from 30 years to 60 years is the difference there. So that is how you can achieve your goals if you follow the right program. And maybe your goal is to walk across the world or across a country. I did that, and these are the folks that I walked into Santiago de Compostela with. We walked across the country. It was a great time. I've made family members now, my Camino family that I'm friends with. I'm actually going to walk in Portugal with a couple of folks that I walked with last year. But those may be your dreams and your goals. And the only way to really get those is not to set New Year's resolutions. Does anybody here set New Year's resolutions? You do. I hope it's working out, because only about 8% of people in the world ever achieve their New Year's resolutions. It is not very successful in that. But what you can do is set goals. Setting goals and objectives will give you more success than New Year's resolution. And there's reasons for that if you do it properly. So this is me the day I achieved my 5th dan in Bujinkan Ninpo Taijutsu, which is the art of the ninja. Dr. Masaki Hatsumi is my grandmaster. He did the, what do we call the Sakai test, the 5th dan test. If you put your phone over that, you can actually see what that is if you want to watch what that particular test is. But during my martial arts training in ninjutsu, one of the things that we did was being able to sense danger. So we started working with our mind and trying to use that. And it really got me to thinking about, how does the mind actually work? And so what I did is I started studying hypnosis with Dr. John Kappas, the father of modern hypnosis, and became a hypnotherapist, learned how the mind worked, how the subconscious worked. And it really got me thinking about goal setting, because I had been setting goals and just wasn't getting where I wanted to get. And I really, started even using what they called SMART goals. Many of you may have heard of SMART goals in the past, but they were making me feel dumb. And dumb being don't understand my brain. Once I understood my brain, it helped me understand how to start setting goals properly. So part of the training we realized was that with the brain, as you're born, your brain is an open slate, an empty vessel. And as you start hanging around your family, your friends, your people within your, as a child, your primary caretakers, your parents, grandparents, etc., you start learning what the brain thinks of as knowns. And again, I've used positive and negative here, but when you're at this age, there is no positive or negative. They're just knowns. It's just what the brain knows to be or what it assumes is true. Those may not necessarily be the truth or positive, depending on, where you want to go in life. So a lot of times as this gets in there, all that information goes in there. And about the age of 8 years old, we start developing what's called the critical mind filter, where as you start learning all these knowns, then the brain has this filter. When somebody tells you something, that filter goes up and looks at the knowns and goes, okay, is that true? Is that what I know to be true within my mind? Well, again, depending on what that is, it may turn into a negative as opposed to a positive effect for what you're trying to do. So it'll start blocking those suggestions and those dreams and goals that you may have. You may have a goal to be rich or to make a lot of money, and all of a sudden your mind will look back and go, my parents once told me that the root of all evil is money. I don't want to be evil, so I don't want to make a lot of money. Well, that's not necessarily true, but that's the known that is in there. So we have many of those limiting beliefs, as they're now known, in our mind that sometimes we have to overcome. So what the great thing about hypnosis that I learned is that you can use hypnosis and techniques to bypass that critical mind filter, allowing you to go in and change those negative knowns that we now have as negatives to what we want to achieve, and turn those into some positive suggestions to replace those. But that takes going through hypnosis or other tools. And I took some of those tools from the hypnosis program and decided to share that with what I know to the world with my book, 9 Steps to Successful Goal Achievement. And that has helped me tremendously once I learned how I can program or reprogram those negative knowns out of my subconscious into positive knowns that I want to be able to live with the rest of my life. So let's talk about those 9 steps that I put together in my book. The first step and the first thing you need to do is write it down. That's very important. And that's one of the reasons why New Year's resolutions rarely work. People don't write them down. They just say, I'm going to lose weight, or I'm going to do this, or I'm not going to do that. They really don't write it down. It's just something in their brain. And we know that we forget things after a while, and your priorities change. But Napoleon Hill, when he wrote his book, Think and Grow Rich, he interviewed all of the wealthy people of that time and asked them why are they rich and what makes them so. And they all had the exact same thing: clearly defined written goals. So when we talk about that, you really want to write your goals down. Now, Dr. Gail Matthews at Dominican University in San Rafael, California, I think it was 2009, did a study using students and people within the university to really prove that this actually is true. So in their study that they did, you can find out more about that on the internet, but they found that you have a 42% greater chance of achieving your goal if you write it down. How many would you like to have a 42% greater chance in doing anything in your life? Yeah, everybody. Way to go, Patricia. Yeah, everybody wants that added percentage. If you could do that, we would all be much better. So according to her research, the positive effect of written goals was supported, and those who write their goals down significantly increase their ability to achieve those goals. But that's not all. Again, Napoleon Hill found out clearly defined written goals. So you want to be specific in the goal. You don't want to just say, I want to lose weight. I want to be rich. My sister tells me, reminds me that when I was growing up, on my mirror in my bedroom, I want to be rich, or I will be rich. Well, what does that mean? What does the brain consider rich? You know, for some people, having $5,000 a year might be rich. It depends on where you're at, what your income levels have been, but what makes that clear to the brain? You have to be specific. So just to give you a good idea, you really want to think about it as a story. Everybody loves a good story. Storytelling, as all of you, Patricia and all the speakers know, this is a big key. So instead of me wanting to lose weight from my 300 pounds to 185, instead of saying I will weigh 185 pounds on 12/31, or I want to lose weight, what I did is I came up with the specifics. When I wake up on December the 31st and go into my bathroom, I'm going to step on my scale, and I'm going to see 185 on the scale, and I'm going to pump my fist, and I'm going to give a shout. Woo! Happy New Year. Happy New You. Now, what did I do there? I told a story, but not only that, I'm able to, with this story and with this setting, I can now feel and sense the emotion that I have in there when I have that outcome. So I'm striving to feel the emotions and the energy in there. I'm also visualizing myself going and getting on the scale. So I'm using some other techniques we'll talk about, but use that story. Be as specific as possible using a story as you're setting your goals. Be realistic. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of time, but this, I don't want to make you think that you can't do moonshots. Google has an entire department that focuses on moonshot goals, is what they call them. Things that are just kind of out of this world that may or may not be able to come true. We don't really know. We never realized that at one point that we could actually fly from the United States to England in a silver, aluminum tube across the country in a few hours. I never thought about it that in the years past. That wasn't realistic. When we're talking about realistic is something that is not possible within a given period of time. Doesn't mean it can't be something that could happen in the future. I like to refer to them, instead of moonshots, because we've been to the moon, I call them Mars shots, because nobody has actually been to the moon yet, or to Mars yet, and that's one of the goals we can have. But unrealistic would be, I'm going to win the lottery. You have no way of knowing that. It's a guess, it's a game. But also, I love tennis, and we recently had Wimbledon. I think breakfast at Wimbledon a couple times. If I made the goal today to say I'm going to go to Wimbledon and I'm going to win Wimbledon next year, well, that's not going to happen. That is not realistic. There's just no way. And again, it's not because I couldn't try, but I'm well past the retirement age of most tennis players, and it's just not going to happen. So really, it's what can you do within reason and be realistic. Step number 3 is set a deadline. You want to make sure that you have a deadline, because without a deadline, again, it's just a dream. If you can't figure out a time frame, time frames can change again. You never know when a pandemic is going to strike and things get shut down and your world goes to, in a little handbasket somewhere. So you want to make sure, don't worry about the deadline doesn't necessarily mean it's over if it passes. You just want to make sure you have one so that there's a little pressure to get things completed. The next step is to set an action plan. That's key. You want to create a plan and you want to work the plan. That's why it's called an action plan, is you want to take action. But what do you want to do? How are you going to measure your success? What are you going to know is get to moving you along? So you really want to figure out what is your result? What's the outcome that you want to have for your plan, not just the different action steps. And you also want to know, what do I need to measure? There are certain things that you may not, depending on your goal, need to really focus on. And a lot of times we sit and work on things that aren't really moving us forward. It's just, movement, not action. So you want to determine, what do you measure? Measure what matters. And then once you've defined your outcomes that you're going to get, your key results, what actions or events must you take before you can achieve your goal? So a goal without action is just a wish. If you don't really do it, it's just, you just keep dreaming and wishing it's going to happen for you, and that does not work. The other key with taking and making an action plan is measuring it and track it. It's important, especially in organizations, when you're doing your objectives, you want to make sure that you measure it and track it. And even for us, as we're going through it, again, this is why New Year's resolutions rarely work, is people don't write them down and they don't measure it or track to see how they're doing. It's just a thing in the back of their mind. So you want to go out and make sure that you measure the important items. You want to make sure that you have a system that you can use to track those objectives and the actions that you need to take. And again, measure what needs to do and what is important. Measure what important. John Doerr is one of the evangelists of the OKR, objective and key results concept. And he really talks about, you want to measure what matters. What Tom Peters used to say is, what gets measured gets done. So measurement is very important, and tracking that on a constant basis, daily, weekly, however often you need to for that particular action, you want to make sure that you keep that and keep it tracked. And here's a big one. Define your why. Why do you want to achieve your goal? What is the purpose of this particular objective? What's the mission of it? This is where you really get that motivation. There's a lot of different areas that you may be motivated by. It could be you're motivated not to go bankrupt, and that's why you want to work and make a lot of money. Or, more positive, you have a specific purpose. I want to be able to live unencumbered and be able to travel around the world without having to worry about where I'm going. I can travel anywhere, do whatever I want, and enjoy life with my family, loved ones, whatever that is. What is your North Star that you're working for? That is important to know, because when your world feels like it's falling apart, you can look back on that purpose and you can envision that and see that where you're going, and then that will keep you motivated. And this is also one of the biggest things I recommend. I've talked about this in these being specific, but visualization is so powerful. How many of you do visualization or visualization exercises? Anybody? Patricia, Reg, great. Visualization is so key. We're visual people. I mean, now, all of social media uses video or images. Or not Facebook, but Twitter used to be nothing but 140 characters of written text, and they are now all video that gets their things going. And storytelling, as we mentioned, is so key to learning and remembering images to help us, be able to feel and imagine things in our brains and in our minds. And visualization is just a very big key to being able to see the outcome of where you want to be. Michael Phelps, we all know Michael Phelps and how successful he was as a swimmer in the Olympics, all the awards and medals that he won. Michael had a coach that started with him when he was 11 years old, I believe, and his coach would start him off every day, visualizing him getting on the blocks. When the buzzer rang or the gun went off, he would visualize himself jumping into the pool, swimming across at record time, and winning that record race in the record time. So that was always the video that his coach had in play. And every time he walked by him as he got ready to get up on the blocks, his coach would say, "Michael, play the video." So he always saw himself being the winner, being the fastest, doing what he needed to do. He saw that outcome in his mind as he did it, and that's why he became amazing. Matthew Walker, professor of neuroscience and psychology at UC Berkeley, says that visualization is 50% as effective as physically performing the skills. He tells stories about how many studies, professional basketball players, for example, will get people training with basketballs and doing shooting, free throws and things. And those who actually practice with the real basketball, do it over and over again. Then there are those who go out and they practice visually in their mind, setting up, doing the correct shots and everything. And then when they go out and do the shooting, they are much more successful than those who are actually practicing with a basketball. So that sort of thing, again, passive play, as he calls it, can cause a rewiring of the brain beneficially. So visualization is key in everything. So I encourage you to utilize that. If you're doing goals, one thing you can do is create a vision board where you can see yourself in those, or as I like to say, put yourself in it. One of my goals at one point was to drive a BMW Z4. I wanted to own one because I thought they were really cool. I went around the BMW Performance Center in one years ago, and I loved it. And this is me in a photo at that BMW Performance Center in that red BMW Z4. And I ended up buying a Z4 in 2017 because I wanted to achieve that goal. And that I named my car Gina, not because it's a girl's name, but because it stood for Goal Imagined, Now Achieved. So that was my winner there. The other thing that is very important is you have to make a commitment to your goal. A friend of mine one time said, goals don't work. I said, well, goals do, but you have to make sure you follow the right program and that you make a commitment to them. What I like to do when I start setting my goals is I actually have a document where I create a personal contract with myself telling me when I'm going to achieve that goal and sign that with my signature. Having your signature on a contract means something to most of us. That's that contract we do, a commitment, that a promise that we've made that we're going to pay off. And that's how I do that. So I make a contract with myself. And then you have to hold yourself accountable. It's very important. I recommend having an accountability partner to depend on who you're working with. You want to get somebody of like mind. That's why mastermind groups are really good. This morning I was a little late because I joined a mastermind group that I work with now on Wednesday mornings at 6 a.m. Having that like-mindedness helps keep you on track. And if possible, get a coach. A coach is sometimes very required to be able to keep you on track. So make sure you are held accountable for your goals. And the last part of this is reward yourself. This is very key as well. People go, what do you mean reward myself? What am I going to do? Well, achieving goals often requires creating new habits. And if you're familiar with habits and the habit loop, habits are really, you have a trigger, a cue, then you do something, and then you get a reward. Bad habits are the same as good habits. They're all done the same way. For example, I used to, and right now still do, but one of the things I used to do every day as I would get stressed at work, I would get up from my desk, go walk around the buildings down in downtown San Francisco until I found the specialty store. Specialty makes wonderful pastries, so I would buy me a pastry and I would eat that pastry and I felt wonderful. It was so good. It relieved my stress, and I'm a stress eater sometimes. So, that is, again, a bad reward for it. So I started doing a similar thing. When I got stressed, I would go walk around the building, come back in, go to the refrigerator, pull out an apple, slice the apple up because I liked apples, and cut them into little slices. And then I would eat my apple. A much healthier reward to, achieve than the pastry or the big cookie that Specialty used to sell. Sadly, they all went out of business in the pandemic. Or happily for me, because can't go there anymore. But again, sometimes you have to reward yourself. I used to pay myself when I was trying to earn my BMW Z4. When I achieved part of that, which was paying off bills and credit cards, I would go to the BMW Center and get a test drive of a BMW just to make sure that I can again feel what it was like to drive that car. So what gets measured gets done. What gets measured and fed back gets done well, and what gets rewarded gets repeated. And that is critical. You want to make sure that you reward yourself so that you want to do it again. That's part of the reward process. So those are the 9 steps to successful goal achieving. Making sure that you follow and include all of these within your goal setting will help you with a larger percentage of achievement in your goals. So goal getting program that I do is sort of an OKR framework, and objectives and key results. And I did this program since I think 2004 is when I started training people on my goal getting program. I never heard of OKRs at that time, but it turns out there's basically 3 parts of objectives and key results, which objectives are the goals and the key results are how you measure those goals. So it's the what do I want to achieve? Why do I want to achieve? Again, that why is very important. That North Star, and whether it's personal goals or corporate goals, you want to know what the reason is, and people need to know what the why is for those goals to make them be excited to come in the morning and achieve those goals with you as an organization. And then how are you going to know you're successful? What's the outcome going to look like? What are you going to do to achieve those goals and objectives that you've set? So those are the 3 pillars of the OKR framework and goal getting program that I teach. So what is your objective? Again, when you're writing your objective, you want to make sure that you put in your objective that outcome that you want to see, not that you're going to lose weight, but what is the actual outcome? Think about, where am I going to be in the realm of my life when I achieve this particular goal? So what you might want to do is you can use tracking, and this is a system I've created, a very physical system using paper, but we have some electronic OKR tracking programs that are much easier to use a lot of times for especially corporate goals, where you need to have an entire organization looking at the goals and following the goals and tracking them. But for my personal goals, I use a piece of paper because I like to write those down in cursive. So I'm sure those of you who have been in teaching before know that they've stopped doing cursive writing, but cursive is very important because it bypasses that critical mind filter when you're writing, because it goes through the bypasses the asynchronous, I forgot the term now, but autonomic nervous system, and goes directly into the subconscious. You don't have to think about it. We're so used to writing in cursive that it just kind of bypasses that critical mind filter. So it helps us get that into the subconscious quickly. So you want to write down, what do you want to achieve, thinking and visualizing in that emotion that you want to have in there. So what I want you right now to do is, on a piece of paper, if you've got something in front of you, if not, you can do this later, but for a quick second or so, let's have you write what is your top goal or objective for the rest of 2023. Write your what. Again, think about, that visualization, that emotion that you need to have out there within that. Visualize it. Create that video of yourself achieving that goal, the outcome. You want to see yourself as that outcome of what your goal is. You want to feel it, you want to visualize it, and create a video of that particular goal. All right, the why. What is your purpose? Why do you want to achieve this objective? Well, when I was losing weight, I've tried many times. Once I figured this out, I wrote down my why. Now you would think, well, you want to be good looking so the ladies will like you. You want to, be in good health so you can see your grandkids. I'm not having any. My daughter's decided not to have children. So my real reason, as I started thinking about it, was when I release all my extra weight and weigh 185 pounds, I will have created a new healthy lifestyle that would allow me to eliminate my diabetic. Because being overweight, I became a type 2 diabetic and spend over $300 per month on all the different medicines that were prescribed to me. But by saving that, I could use that money for traveling and going to fun places, which, is what I really like doing. And that was my why for that particular goal that I set. So what is your why for the goal you just wrote down? Why do you want that? What is the real reason? And sometimes you have to ask yourself when you're thinking about your why. There's an exercise called the 5 whys, the Ishikawa diagram, where you ask why, and then you give yourself an answer and you go, okay, why do you want that? And then you keep going down asking why as many times as you can till you get to the real reason. Because a lot of times we start thinking about what the outcome is and why we want it when we don't really understand it until we really start asking the deep questions. So now that you've got your why for your goal or objective, again, remember to visualize it and create the video. See yourself achieving that goal. What's the outcome you want to be at? See that in your mind there. And the third thing is the how. These are the key results. How am I going to know I'm successful in being where I want to be? So my how, my measurement that I needed to do is what I would release 2 pounds per week from my body. That was the outcome that I would see. 2 pounds per week being, I'm not telling you how I'm going to achieve that 2-pound weight loss. That's not the point here. This is how are we going to measure it? What are the results we're going to be tracking? So this is one. My calorie intake will be only 1,200 calories per day. I did that to lose that weight. My calorie deficit will be 1,000 over my calories per day. My carbohydrate intake would decrease by 25%, and et cetera. Exercise increase. So these are physical measurements that I can take, that I can show that I'm actually moving forward in my goal that I'm doing. So these are the key results that I'm looking for, that I'm going to track however often I need to. So once you've outlined this for your different goals, and again, electronic systems for corporations are a little different, but the same concept, but it's easier to track and for multiple people to manage those goals, those key results, and track those on a computer system. So how will you know you're successful in your goal? So what I want you to do is write one how, one key result that you would see and that you would be measuring as an actual outcome during that period of time. And you're going to track your period of time depending on your goal. We typically on corporate do quarterly measurements where we want to see this in a particular quarter. As we go through, the actual goal or objective may be a longer term, but we measure our key results on a quarterly basis. In my personal goal tracking, because I wanted to do it, I tracked it a little bit differently. I did it daily on those different items just to see, or weekly at the minimum on some of those items that I was measuring as my key results. So I have a worksheet that I created. Again, this is a paper-based worksheet. Electronic systems are very similar to this, but what you do is you have a way to track what you're doing and how you're doing it. Then you see we have the reward. Now I'm money motivated. Most of us, I think, here are probably money motivated, but it could be something else that makes you more as a reward. Now I'm not going to pay myself physical money in this. One of the techniques that I learned from Dr. John Kappas was what's called the mental bank system, where we pay ourselves in mental bank notes or mental bank dollar amounts. So we pay ourselves an amount for each of the areas that we're tracking the different actions. So my key results are my calories intake, my calories burned, and my calorie deficit. Then there are the actual action items, the individual tasks that have to be done to achieve those different items. So one of my value events that I had, and again, value events being those actions that will move you forward in your goal. You know, doing research on what would be a good thing for you to do is not a value event. That's research. It doesn't count. You know, what are you actually doing depending on what your value, your goal, your objective is. So me, no breads with gluten. I'm not gluten intolerant, but being able to cut down the calories of the carbohydrates. So I started eating the cauliflower type breads and things like that, so that I was doing vegetables instead of the gluten, not so much the gluten, but the carbs. And then the cardio. So I had the different exercises that I needed to do and different activities to help me burn the calories. And then by the goal, this is the goal that I had each day that I was going to do, or the number of times that I was going to do per week in this particular case. So you have that out there. And then how much am I going to pay myself for each one of those? So what we do is we calculate how much we think that's worth to us mentally. If you notice, burpees I was going to do 10 a day. You see that it was $25 for each one of the burpees. All the other items were $5 and $10 I was paying myself for each one of those. Why are burpees so much higher? I hate burpees. They're hard, they hurt, and I need the incentive to be able to do more of those. So I pay myself because it has a bigger return value. I burn more calories with a burpee than I do with walking, or than I do with a push-up or squat or whatever. So I pay myself more. But anyway, you track these items on a daily basis, how many you did, you total them up, and then you total them at the end of the week with the balance to date, and you keep track of that mental bank. So you're building this balance in your bank account, your mental bank account, showing that you're getting progress and you're actually achieving these particular goals. Now, you also notice at the bottom here, I date it, and then I have a signature. So I sign this at the end of the week that I did this. Again, this is part of my commitment to doing this. This is my signing off on that. And then you keep doing that. So you want your value events to be those things that move you forward. You want to measure what matters. Those are the things that really matter for you. So those are the 9 steps. And that's, again, a program that I use to tracking. You have to have a system to be able to track that. It sounds like a lot of work. You say, I don't need to do that. I just say I'm going to be, 185 pounds. That's not going to work. I'll tell you that now. Tracking it is very important. How many of you plan your vacation? How much time do you spend planning your vacation, a 1-week trip? A lot of time. So if you're going to plan your life and your successes and your goals, you need to spend time thinking about it, planning it, and doing what needs to be done. And one of the things you need to do is create a success mindset. The mindset is what controls our thoughts, our dedication to what we're doing, determination. So I have 2 things that I like to talk about with my success mindset and guarding your mind. I call those the morning ritual and the magic 30 minutes. So the morning ritual, rule your morning, rule your day. So these are some things that I recommend. You don't have to do them all. You don't have to do any of them. You can come up with your own. But one of the things I recommend is waking up at 4 a.m. Well, maybe not 4 a.m. That may be too early for most of you. But the key is wake up early. The key, if you get up early, you have more time to do things, especially if you got kids and things running around. You give yourself that time where you can focus on what you're wanting to do, get your day started. Make my bed. There's a great video, Admiral, I think Walraven, I can't remember his last name now, but he talks about making my bed, how important that was in the military and through their training. But again, it's difficult to make my bed if somebody's in the bed with me. When I get up at 4 in the morning, they tend to frown on that. So you may not want to do that, if you have a partner that is in your bed at the same time and you get up at 4 a.m. and they don't. Gratitude journal. I write in a gratitude journal in the morning. I get up. That's one of the first things I do is what am I grateful for? Why am I grateful for it? And a lot of times you guys are in there. You want to watch or listen to a motivational video or something motivational in the morning to psych you up, get your brain thinking positively. There's Tony Robbins teaches a technique called priming and meditation. I've done priming exercises that Tony Robbins did. I do a lot of meditations in the morning. Exercise and stretching first thing in the morning is also very good to get your body moving, get the blood moving, and the brain activated by moving some blood through it. So those are the things. Rule your morning, rule your day. Start routines. Start this morning ritual that you can do to get yourself started in the morning on a positive note. And then I'd have the magic 30 minutes. Using this technique that I showed you with the different tracking tools, I do that at the magic 30 minutes. And by magic 30 minutes, it's the last 30 minutes before you go to sleep is the time where your brain is most susceptible to being, getting those subconscious mind items going in there. So I recommend 30 minutes before you go to sleep, not before you go to bed. You may do a lot of things in the bed before you go to sleep, but that last 30 minutes before you go to sleep, your brain is the most attentive and open to those suggestions that you're going to put in there. So calculate your successes at that point. Also write down the good happenings that happened to you today at that time. You want to put those good things that you had happen to you, as many as you can think of, write those down. as you go to bed or go to sleep. And then affirmations, what are you going to achieve? Again, put those positive thoughts in your subconscious at that particular time. Again, we're trying to overcome that critical mind filter, and this is the best time to do that, is at that last 30 minutes before you go to sleep. The key is not 9 steps, but the first step. If you don't take that first step, it looks a little challenging, but if you don't take the first step, you're not going to take the 9 steps. So you got to take action. And that's the key to achieving your goals, is taking the action, and most often massive action if you can, to get started. Breakfast Club, I just want to leave you with, it's time to begin. This is how you can reach me. Any questions? We can answer, go to Q&A.
Right.
Tony, that was absolutely amazing. And we've all heard goal-setting programs, and I believe we should probably listen to programs like this. Yours was so specific, and the visuals were fabulous. It was amazing. I am highly motivated, and yes, my New Year resolutions will be written goals, which I have to review every day. Had you ever considered, if you don't do what you're supposed to do, or you committed to do you fine yourself? You are mentally rewarding yourself, but do you take an actual $5 to put in the charity box, as it were, every time you don't do what you committed to?
That's a good point. No, I do not. That's a good action I think maybe we should take. It's kind of like the swear jar.
A couple of comments about handwriting, and Derek wants to know cursive.
Mm-hmm.
And we accept that when you write notes, it's easier to remember, and as Rowan says, you build a mental a muscle memory of what you're learning when you write it down yourself. But Derek says cursive is what you call the real handwriting.
Exactly. Yeah. Cursive is what we always called it growing up. I don't know what they call it anywhere else. This was gorgeous. But I think it's known in the U.S. as cursive writing. Basically, it's script, whatever you write. And again, typically nowadays, a lot of people do not write in cursive. They're not trained anymore in education in schools to do that, I believe, from what I've heard. But in cursive, the key is it's kind of like riding a bicycle. Once you've ridden a bicycle, you do that because you've got that muscle memory, and it's all training. And the same thing with writing. When you're writing, you don't have to think about, okay, I got to write my A. Well, unless you're young and the teacher's hitting you on the wrist with the ruler, you don't have to concentrate on writing the letters. You're just writing it. So again, that helps because it's using that autonomic nervous system. It goes directly into the subconscious. It's not something you have to think about. So it just helps bypass that much easier using the cursive. Or again, if you don't write in cursive, all you do write in is text or block, whatever you call that. Again, these days, that's what most people do. Again, it's the same thing. You want to write it as much as possible, but the cursive has that flow to it that helps bypass.
I've never heard of the word this side of the pond. That word doesn't work. I had to keep translating what Patricia was saying to me a month ago and looking it up. So absolutely, I cannot believe that schools don't teach handwriting, because as Susan says, absolutely, it goes into, you use your dominant hand, it goes into your brain, and it helps the memory. Absolutely vital.
Yep.
As all of you know, I've known Tony for a long time. We became good friends when we attended the NSA Speakers Academy from 2016 to 2017. And I have his book. However, Tony, this was one of the best presentations I have ever seen about goal setting, goal getting. The part about, I must have typed 10 pages of notes. But the part about story, knowing the story and visualizing the story and visualizing the receiving, the accomplishing of the goal was so, so powerful. Of course, those of us who attend NSA meetings know from Patricia that storytelling is the way to evoke emotion in your audience, et cetera, et cetera. But I never thought about using story on myself. So that was extremely, extremely powerful. Thank you so much, Tony.
You're welcome. That visualization, seeing the outcome, having an outcome mindset, and seeing the ending of that, on your stage. When you're, again, as a speaker, you want to see yourself before you go out on stage, out there having a roaring audience and everybody just wanting to meet you and all that other good stuff. Whatever your outcome is that you're desiring, you want to see that in your mind. So
Carl Walsh, who has heard many great programs like this, thinks it's the best program on the subject he has ever heard. You handle it so well.
Tony, I have been doing goal setting for 25 years with my coaching program, etc. And we handwrite in journals, and we used to get a journal every year. A nice leather journal. I just have to say this is, and I will reiterate, one of the best presentations on goal setting. And you made it clear. You were enthusiastic. Your presentation was spot on, organized, the photos, everything was really, really the best. Tony, thank you. You are definitely a role model. Well done.
Yes, it's occurred to me listening to all this about handwriting and all that a good way perhaps to prepare for a presentation, for me, when I write or type, I type as if it's going to be published. I write like a writer, and then I have to take it out and say it, and then I start saying it like I'm a speaker. And wouldn't it be interesting if you did the writing, so you've got that saved, then handwrite it from there, say it, and then do a transcript of what you just said. And maybe that's a little involved, maybe it's a little complicated, but like Janice, I used to practice out in the backyard until my neighbor, who is a county sheriff, was wondering if she was going to have to put the cuffs on. But it might be an interesting way to do it. I'm going to try that.
It actually is, because again, you're doing the visuals, the kinetic, and the auditory learning. You're hearing yourself as well as talking, so you've got all the different inputs that you're doing in that particular method. So that
interesting. Thank you, Tony.
All right.